Hello and welcome back to our discussion of blood flow and pressure. In this video, we will be talking about regulation of blood pressure. Okay, so as we've discussed in class, it's very important to maintain homeostatic control of your blood pressure and to keep it within a certain range. This is our reflex pathway for controlling blood pressure. It's called the baroreceptor reflex. It's named after these receptors called baroreceptors, which are located in our aorta and in our carotid artery. The carotid artery is the main branch of the aorta that leads up to the head. Okay, so we have these baroreceptors in our aorta and our carotid arteries. They are stretch sensitive, so they're constantly monitoring for blood pressure. Okay, so what happens is that they change their firing rate. So they fire action potentials. They're going to change their firing rate based on what the blood pressure is. So if the blood pressure is higher, you're going to get more stretch in the artery, and the baroreceptor is going to detect that. And it's going to send a signal up to this cardiovascular control center in the brain, in a part of the brain called the medulla. Okay. And then as a result of those signals that are going into the brain is then going to send out signals to our autonomic nervous system. Okay. As a result of that, the autonomic nervous system is going to make adjustments to bring blood pressure back to normal. So let's take a closer look at that. Okay, so again, depending on what the blood pressure is, what the current situation is, the cardiovascular control center is going to basically change its balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic activation. And in so doing, it's going to change blood pressure. Okay, these are the targets of the sympathetic nervous system. We have the SA node here. We've got the ventricles here. We've got the arterioles here, and we've got the veins here. So those are our sympathetic targets. Okay, our parasympathetic targets are actually just one target, it's the SA node. Okay, so what I would like you to do at this moment is to consider this question right here, right? So remember that the goal is to change blood pressure, but what exactly is going to happen at each of these targets that is going to have an effect on blood pressure? So please take a moment, hit pause, think about that question, and we'll come back to it. Okay, so I don't know how much of this you were able to recall on your own or figure out on your own, but let's go through and talk about what happens at each of these targets that is then going to have an effect on blood pressure. Okay, so the SA node, remember that that's the pacemaker of the heart. So that's going to affect heart rate, which then is going to affect cardiac output, which then is going to affect your blood pressure. So that's what's going to happen at the SA node. At the ventricles, this one is probably the trickiest one to figure out. At the ventricles, what we're going to do is we're going to change our contractility. So if we change our contractility, the force with which the heart is pumping, then that's going to affect our stroke volume, which is going to affect our cardiac output, which is also going to affect our blood pressure. Okay. Arterioles, we can constrict, vasoconstrict at the arterioles, or we can kind of lighten up our signal to vasoconstrict, so allow those to dilate. And then same with the veins. Okay, so we're going to constrict or dilate the veins. Looking at our parasympathetic target, we just have that one target, the SA node. And again, as we already discussed, the SA node is going to be responsible for governing the heart rate. Okay. All right, so that's all I'm going to say right now about the baroreceptor reflex. In class, we are going to do an exercise where we think through the response of this whole system to both high blood pressure and to low blood pressure.